welcome back to 3 Years LegalEdge 3 Years LLB YouTube channel. I'm back again with a super insightful, informative video for all preparing for NLSAT. They're still like slightly confused whether or not to like start preparing. Either way, so you'll find yourself watching this video in either of the two scenarios. Either you've like just chanced upon this exam by the name NLSAT, or you already have some idea and you're trying to navigate as to how to pick up your preparation, or you're like full-fledged into the preparation for this examination and you're just trying to figure out the next steps. Either ways, the session is going to be extremely helpful no matter which category you're a part of. A little bit of context first. So NLSAT is law entrance examination conducted by NLSIU Bangalore. NLSIU Bangalore is one of the most prominent, coveted law schools of the country. It's a dream law school for every law aspirant out there. In India, you can do law like either of the two ways: 5-year, which is like right after your class 12th, and 3-year, which is the eligibility for which is graduation. The exam was introduced by NLS in the year 2022. And since then, it has garnered a lot of traction. Law is a great career upgrade in your trajectory right after your graduation. A professional degree opens up, amplifies your access to opportunities. You can work at tier 1 law firms, policy think tanks, make a lot of money, of course. So you'll see a lot of graduates currently gravitating towards NLSAT and a lot of other LLB entrances as well. So even if you've just started off preparation, you're thinking to start whichever of the categories that you resonate with, couple of things that will be extremely helpful for you that we'll discuss in this session. So first things first, command over language is your competitive edge. Now, before that, a little about how does the paper pattern of NLSAT looks like. So it's essentially part A and part B. Just a second, guys. Am I like audio visual clear? Yes. So part A and part B. Now part A is objective with like 75 objective questions from English, CR, GK. You have 8 dense passages. And then part B is subjective in nature, where you have 5 case studies and 1 analytical essay. 75 marks, 75 marks. The paper is a 150 marks plus 1 for each correct answer in part A for your objective section. And then part B is 5 case studies, 12 marks each, and 1 analytical essay, 15 marks. You get 150 minutes plus 1 for each correct, minus 0.25 for not just for incorrect, but for unattempted questions too. So that pretty much is your context. And now let's quickly come to as to how command over language is a competitive edge advantage that you have. Now understand you have to read 8 dense passages and diverse. The genres will range, the spectrum will range from gender, international, philosophy, literary fiction, etc. Now, if you're not accustomed to reading, or if you're not accustomed to a certain level of reading, you'll find it much more difficult to read, not just read, but comprehend what's written and what's the author trying to communicate and what exactly are you being tested on. So throughout your preparatory journey, you should focus on improving your language, your vocabulary, command over language, and something that will help you perform a lot better in your part B as well. Since part B, you are to articulate yourself. If you do not have a decent command over language, you will struggle with articulating sentences. So in your preparatory journey, focus on building this skill, wherein you're improving a lot more. So see, language can also be broadly compartmentalized under two heads, speech and written, so verbal and written. While you still have time to work on your communication skills, improve language, written is something that will become extremely important for your NLSAT Part B. So try and build that command over language. And language will also help you in your Part A in reading those passages, not zoning out, being able to comprehend them better, and the terms and everything. Now, second, so you have part A and part B, and part A is objective in nature. This is where you optimize your scores. Now, a lot of people out there will tell you that, you know, try and score like really high in part B, try and score really high in part B. But then we'll also come to as to how after a certain point in time you will hit a plateau in part B and how exactly you can optimize your scores here. Now think about it. At least I tell all my students to target a 60 plus in part A, because if you're scoring a 60 plus, it puts you in a very comfortable position. 60 out of 75. A 60 here, and then even if you score like slightly less and you end up scoring 40 marks in part B, out of which, so see, your case studies 60 marks, 12 into 5, and your analytical essay 15 marks. So even if you end up scoring 40, you still score 100, which is a very safe score to make it to NLSIU Bangalore. Plus, it every additional mark that you score here, it actually creates a buffer for you. So the more you score here, the more leverage you'll have, and a lot of pressure would be off your shoulders, and you can like slightly here and there in part B, you'll still get through. And the most important part is that part A, since it's objective in nature, so you'll either score or you'll not. There is no subjectivity per se. With part B, since it's subjective in nature, no matter like you'll end up writing the best answer in your understanding. However, you still not score as expected. And must have happened with a lot of you in school, college, that you never really get full marks in a subjective paper, in a subjective answer. So this is where you optimize your scores. Try and score as high as you can in part A so that you're at a very comfortable position. And even if part B is one of your weak areas, you struggle, you'll be able to get through. Plus, English and CR is pretty doable, and maximize your scores in English and CR in part A as well. We'll also come to how to maximize your scores in GK, but a little bit of brief for you that English and CR are one of the two areas where you can score the highest. Okay, for all preparing for NLSAT 2027, we have the boot camp starting from tomorrow, 17th and 19th. We'll do a lot of foundational work, strategies, whether or not to read the newspaper, how to read the newspaper, how many marks, part A, part B, every single question, frequently asked question that troubles any student or on your mind, we'll discuss all of them. The registration link is in the bio. Sorry, the registration link is in the comment section, and you'll find it in the description box. Do register, and I hope to see you all attending the boot camp. On 18th, we have 6 months current affairs marathon. So we'll cover every single thing from Jan to June. And on 19th, we have the All India Open Mock. Great opportunity for you to test yourself against hundreds of aspirants. Okay, quickly moving forward. So part B. Now part B is definitely a differentiator, but this is after a certain point in time, this is where your scores will plateau. They'll hit a saturation point. Now think about it. You have 5 case studies, 12 marks each, and 1 analytical essay, 15. Even if I take like the upper threshold that you are scoring like an 8 or a 9 in each case study, which by the way is a very good score, and you're scoring like a 10, 12 here. If I take 8 40 marks here, 10 marks here, 50. Even if I take like the upper threshold, you'll still be somewhere in this range, which is a great score in part B. So part B becomes a differentiator. Think it from a perspective is part A is relatively easier and all serious aspirants are scoring in a certain range, then what will become a differentiating factor is how well you do your part B. Plus, again, one important thing to take note of that only once you qualify that the threshold that you are eligible to have your part B copy evaluated, if you do not meet that threshold, your part B will not be evaluated. So part B is definitely a differentiator, but as explained, the potential after a point in time and hit a plateau, and you will really not have a lot of actionables as to how to improve, how to fetch that one extra mark, the two extra marks. So eventually, how should your strategy looks like is optimize your scores in part A. Do not rely on part B that, okay, if I'm like not scoring that well in part A, I'll balance it with part B. Optimize your scores in part A and then use part B to differentiate. So NLSAT is extremely competitive. To make that edge, use part B as your differentiator after you have maximized your objective scores. Now, quickly, a lot of you feel that GK is extremely random, but GK is not as random as you guys think. You need to identify patterns, you need to identify themes. If you'll actually analyze the last papers from 22 to 26, you would realize you will see a pattern. So developments, major socio-political issues, books and authors, like an all-time favorite, awards, and then focus on the last 6 months of current affairs. If you'll actually pick up 2026 paper, you'll see a lot of questions from March 2026. And the paper was in last week, April. So a lot of questions, roughly 6, 7 questions from March 2026. And then each time you're reading something, try and answer a lot of why and not just what, but a lot of why, and that's how you'll build a deeper understanding of properties, etc. The policy debates. But yes, the last 6 to 8 months are extremely important. Although NLSAT very clearly says that they expect you to be generally aware. So anything that has happened in the last 2 to 3 years of national and international significance, you're expected to know it. Plus the GK is memory based. So you wouldn't be able to deduce the answer from the passage, you're supposed to know it. But what you essentially have to learn for GK is to be able to connect dots. And I'll explain it to you by a simple example. The question was asked in NLSAT 2026. Now, a lot of you might know the answer, a lot of you might not know the answer, but a simplest way, if you'll actually look at the background, Kiran Desai was shortlisted for the Booker Prize, and it is fair to expect for you to know that which year has she won the Booker Prize earlier. And that's how you connect dots. That's how you prepare a lot of GK. While doing the current part, you also have to take note of the static part of anything. So that's how you connect dot, build relations, plus focus on a lot of pop culture themes. Anything which is framing the mainstream discussions, shaping the mainstream discussions, etc. Reading stamina matters more than reading speed. Now, what's the distinction essentially between the two is that you have to consume a lot of content, but at the same time ensure that you're not zoning out. So reading speed is important, but at the same time, so more just put it this way, reading speed. So while this is very important, but you have to also ensure that you're not zoning out after a point in time. Since these are we're talking about 8 passages, then case studies, and then analytical essay, you have to ensure that after like reading thousands of words and switching between themes, you're still able to comprehend it. Otherwise, you'll have to read the same thing twice or thrice. So while you might be like great at reading speed, but you're not able to comprehend what is being asked and understand, you'll struggle. You will have to read the same thing 3 or 4 times, taking up a lot more of your time, and you'll not be able to maintain concentration and you'll lose focus out there. So get into a habit of A, condition yourself to read extremely dense passages between 10 to 12:30, and because that's the official NLSAT timing. And then at the same time, like, practice, condition yourself to read for like 90, 120 minutes in one go. Starting early gets you a big edge. I see a lot of students procrastinating that will start, say, like towards December, January, 3, 4 months before NLSAT. Now, what it does, it essentially, you do not really have a lot of time to build a skill. We're talking about reading, comprehension, answer writing. All of these are skills that take time for you to build, and it's practically not possible to do it in the last 3, 4 months. Even if it is unnecessary, a lot of burden. Plus, a lot of you might be managing it alongside college, which becomes extremely difficult, your semester examinations, etc., a gazillion other things to do. You need like good, all students who made it to NLS last year had started early. So time is a luxury that you can buy for yourself. Plus, you'll gradually start to build an understanding of how to connect dots for GK, how to improve answer writing, how to improve vocabulary, language. So start as early as you possibly can. Last, you don't actually have 150 minutes. So while the paper is from 10 to 12:30 and the time duration is 150 minutes, do not you do not get this complete time. That's all because 5, 7 minutes of yours will go in filling the OMR, and then just getting comfortable with the with your center, the invigilator. You'll have to say like fill your attendance sheet, just switching between sections, papers. All of this takes time. So you should have roughly a buffer of 10, 12 minutes. So you essentially get say like 140, anything between 135 to 140 minutes to solve, to complete your paper. And NLSAT is a game of time management. Half your competition gets eliminated because they could not complete the paper in time. So you roughly get 135 to 140 minutes. Now you have to allocate time for part A. So this is somewhat ideal allocation looks like. 60 minutes stops for part A, 60 to 65. Now 80 minutes for part B. Now always practice keeping the lesser threshold in mind and not the upper threshold. Because if you take the upper threshold, say for example, you practice keeping 70 minutes in mind for your part A. Now, if the paper is extremely difficult, and you end up taking more time than what you can allocate, you will struggle in either of the two sections. So always keep the threshold, lower threshold in mind that you only have 60 minutes. And just in case either of the sections is slightly easier, you can push more. You'll either complete this in 55, or even if you take say like 65 here, you will still be able to compensate. But if you are anyways practicing in 70 minutes and the paper is on say like this difficult side and you take 80 here, you will then have to, you're taking your time from part B. Now part B is subjective, so you will naturally need more time there. So practice it like keeping the lower thresholds in mind and condition your brain to complete the paper within the stipulated time limit. Well, that brings me to the end of this session. I hope it was extremely helpful for all students who are like either preparing for NLSAT 2027 or start preparing. In case you found it insightful, do share it with your like friends, peers, family, and of course, guys, come on, like and subscribe, the usual drill. Any questions, feel free to drop in the chat box, and I'll be back soon with more sessions. Thank you.